I remember creating a video about perspective drawing and surrealism in 2013. I was teaching middle school. It was light years above what almost any of my students that year could do. One student was able to copy my example exactly, and another student seemed to comprehend the thought process a bit and began to create interesting things. The rest of the class had zero interest in the assignment and refused to even attempt it. It's actually a cool video, and I just enjoyed watching it again. I hadn't looked at it in years. I had just gotten an iPad that year and was using the new time-lapse feature on the Sketchbook Pro app. I subsequently spent the next several years reconsidering in my mind how to appropriately scaffold perspective drawing lessons so that the concept would actually click in the students' heads. The key would be to find a way for them to actually enjoy the learning process. So let's tally it up. Success. I learned how to use a new technology and reach my students. Failure. My students were not impressed. Success. I began to rethink my approach, and the process of rethinking led me to experiment with different ideas. Failure. Most of my students that year never progressed beyond drawing simple boxes, and many of them were hostile to the idea of trying even that. Success, I realized I couldn't teach against my students. I had to work with them by discovering their natural interests and building from there. I was wise enough to drop the lesson completely while quietly seeking a different approach. Just a few years later, my students were building cities out of wooden blocks, photographing them from different angles with their phones, and creating wonderful fantasy cityscapes and drawings, just wonderful 3D drawings using toys and inspiration. Moral: treat everything as an experiment. Be okay with being wrong. Every failure gives you information. You might not get to use that information for years, and that's okay. A failed lesson for you might be an inspiration for someone else. That particular video has 1.4 thousand views, so someone somewhere obviously found a use for it. I remember the stark pain of realizing my students that year did not care about what I was teaching. Thankfully, I asked myself these questions. What do they care about? How can I connect what they care about with what I care about? Which leads me to these questions. How do children learn? And how do children learn best? In 2013, I was making a video that 8th graders were ignoring. In 2016, my 6th graders were playing with blocks and toys, making up stories and eagerly drawing pictures. In 2018, my high school foundation students were creating fantasy cityscapes after playing with and photographing blocks and Matchbox cars. Administrators were coming into my room to congratulate me on my innovative approach. What if I'd given up? Or worse yet, what if I'd gotten angry? What if instead of stepping back, I tried to force the lesson on my students or given a lot of zeros? We need to teach the students we have in front of us, not the students we wish we had, not the students we think we deserve, but the students that are in our classroom. The lesson we design for the students we wish we had is important too. We need to give teachers the flexibility to be able to respond to students and develop new approaches. I had successfully taught perspective in previous years. I'd taught it for years, but I couldn't reach this particular group of recalcitrant students. My classroom that year had been strategically stacked to fail by a mean-spirited administrator. This person was trying to get all the veteran teachers to quit so they could stock their building with hand-picked new hires. To further this goal, they deliberately set up a system designed to make sure that the most motivated students chose other electives and placed the most apathetic students in my room. At the same time, they took away any part of my art program likely to motivate typically apathetic children. For instance, they moved me to a basement classroom with no kiln and gave my beautiful art room, which had a practically brand new kiln, to an English teacher. Ironically, this administrator barely knew me and had underestimated my flexibility and ability to learn from the situation. That year, this administrator hired a dance, theater, and film teacher and allowed them to create their own schedules, so they were choosing their own prep and lunch periods. Then, what this administrator did was she had them go around to all the art and music classes and pitch their new programs to all the students, asking who wished to sign up for these exciting new classes. There were 3 things that gave me the strength to withstand this situation. Those things were the book The Fountainhead, the poem If, and the 37th Psalm. Everyone loves to hate on Ayn Rand, and yes, I know, she was an awful person. But that part of The Fountainhead where the architect, the main character, willingly works in a quarry rather than allowing himself to be bullied, that image in my mind got me through the situation. Rudyard Kipling wrote the poem If to his son, explaining what it means to be a man. Here are the lines that resonated with me. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those 2 impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. I felt that after so many years working in that building, and I had spent years building an art program, that I basically was watching the things I gave my life to broken. And I decided that I was going to be a quote-unquote man about it. A man under Rudyard Kipling's definition. And I was going to stoop and build up what I had given my life to. And I was going to build it up with worn-out tools. I made that executive decision. The other thing that really helped me through this situation where somebody was really actually actively sabotaging my art program was the 37th Psalm. My takeaway from reading Psalm 37 is that the only response we can have to evildoers is to always be the better person. Here are the quotes that resonated with me. I have been young, and now I am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. I took that to mean that if I acted righteously, and I stood in front of my students, and I gave them the best teacher possible, that I would not be forsaken. That somehow or another it would limit how far I could fall and how badly the situation could damage me. The other aspect of the 37th Psalm that really helped me through this was, I've seen the wicked in great power and spreading himself like a green bay tree. Yet he passed away, and lo, he was not. Yea, I sought him, but he could not be found. So I figured all I needed to do was weather the storm, that if I kept standing in front of my students and figuring out ways to teach those kids and giving them the best teacher possible, that eventually I would get through this and I would look and all of a sudden the person who was trying to sabotage me would be gone. That I could outlast this person. And that I was going to walk into work every day and I was going to give the kids in front of me, not the kids I thought I deserved, but the kids that were given to me, the best teacher that I could give them. The challenge was responding to student interest. These were 8th graders, but very apathetic ones. I needed to figure out their currency, if that makes any sense. There were several reasons why the class was set up to fail. It had to do with the type of students I was given that year and how they felt about school in general going into the class. When I completely changed my teaching approach, I saw some magic happen, but nobody really learned perspective drawing that year.